That nice old couple didn't save us from the thing in the woods. They were feeding it. Karis was already gone. Not gone from the room, just gone. Lost to the deep, heavy sleep of late pregnancy. Thea had built her a fortress of pillows and quilts, and seeing her there, so peaceful, I felt a pang of something sharp and ugly. Jealousy. It looked like the first real rest she'd had in a month, and I knew I wouldn't get a second of it. I stripped down to my undershirt and slid under the cold sheets beside her. My body screamed for sleep, but my mind was a lit fuse, fizzing and sparking in the dark. Every decision we'd made since the car died had led us to this strange, cold room in this stranger's house. A knot of pure dread had been tightening in my gut since we pulled into their driveway, and now it was a solid stone. Abner and Thea seemed kind, I guess. The way a spider seems kind to a fly. There was something buried deep beneath the folksy hospitality, something they weren't saying. If this were some cheap horror flick, this would be the part where you find out they're cannibals, that the unsettling noises are their last victims chained up in that big, windowless barn out back. But it didn't feel like that. It wasn't malice I felt from them, it was something else. Resignation. A deep, weary sadness. It was in the way Abner looked at me when he asked if I'd been with Karis the entire time. The strain in his voice when he spoke to whatever was just outside the door, telling it he was just spinning a yarn. And the story itself, what was it? An old man's memory, or a warning? A cry split the night air, echoing from the fields. Ma'ah. It almost sounded like a goat this time, or some strange night bird. Almost. That was the word that kept snagging in my thoughts. Almost human. Beside me, Carrie's made a soft snuffling sound, a preview of the full-blown snoring that was surely just a few weeks away. Another cry, closer, but from the west side of the house now. It sounded like they were calling to each other across the dark. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to force my brain into shutting down, just for an hour, please. The cold in the house was a living thing. It crept up from the floorboards and breathed through the thin, single-paned windows. I curled onto my side, pulling my knees to my chest, trying to conserve what little warmth I had. I was just on the edge of sleep, that wonderful fuzzy place where thoughts dissolve into dreams, when I heard it. A soft, wet, dragging sound against the outside wall of the bedroom. My eyes shot open. It wasn't the sharp scratch of claws, not coyotes. This was heavier, slower, like dragging a bag of wet sand across splintered wood. I sat bolt upright, my heart hammering against my ribs. I listened, holding my breath, straining to hear over the blood pounding in my ears. I knew, with absolute certainty, that in the morning I'd feel like an idiot. I'd tell myself it was a branch, or the wind, or the old house settling. But the night has its own logic. The night knows monsters are real. A shriek tore through the silence, so loud and so close it felt like it was inside my head. It was right outside the window. I whipped my head to look at Carrie's, positive she'd be sitting up, wide-eyed. She only mumbled in her sleep and rolled over. I slipped out of bed, the floorboards like ice against my bare feet. I crossed the room, my hand shaking as I reached for the heavy damask curtains. My plan was to peek, just a sliver, to see what was there and prove to myself it was nothing. I pulled the fabric back maybe half an inch. An eye was staring back at me. It was pressed right against the glass. It was huge, round like a dinner plate and slick with a wet, milky sheen. There was no white, just a bottomless, black pupil swimming in a sea of cloudy gray. It wasn't animal, it wasn't human, it just was. And it was looking right at me. I fell backward, not with a shout, but with a choked gasp, my feet tangling and sending me crashing to the floor. The impact sent a jolt of pain up my spine. Lying there on the rough wood, all I could see was the sliver of moonlight where the curtain was still parted. I was terrified to look, terrified it would still be there, but I was more terrified not to know. I scrambled to my feet, my breath coming in ragged heaves. The window was empty, just my own pale, distorted reflection looking back at me from the wavy, ancient glass. My own reflection. The rational part of my brain seized on that explanation, like a drowning man grabbing a life raft. It was just a trick of the light, the shadows, my own exhausted, terrified face. It had to be. Carrie's hadn't stirred. If she'd seen me fall over myself in a panic, she'd never let me forget it. I crept back to the window and, with a trembling hand, I pulled the curtains shut, making sure they overlapped, leaving no path for the moonlight or for anything else. Then, just before the fabric closed, I saw it. A faint, greasy smear on the glass, right where the eye had been. A print, not a handprint, just a perfect, round smudge. I didn't sleep. How could I? The cries and calls continued intermittently throughout the night, a hellish symphony from just beyond the walls. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw that single, wet, unblinking eye burned onto the back of my eyelids. I must have drifted off eventually, because the next thing I knew, pale morning light was cutting bars across the dusty floor. Carrie's was stirring, which meant she'd be up and needing the bathroom any second. I fumbled for my phone. No service, of course, but the screen read 5:48 a.m. I needed to get us out of here. Now. I pulled on my jeans and shirt from the day before. The memory of the eye had faded a little with the daylight, the edges softened. My rational brain was back in charge, armed with sunlight and logic. By the time we left, I'd have myself convinced it was all a bad dream. I opened the bedroom door as quietly as I could. The rich, dark smell of coffee hung in the air, but the house was silent. I padded toward the kitchen, expecting to find Abner or Thea at the table. Instead, I found 2 empty mugs and the sink-and-a-half full pot of coffee sitting on the warmer, still hot. Before I could wonder where they'd gone, I heard Thea's voice calling from the yard. I went to the kitchen window and peered out. Abner's old pickup was backed up to the huge, menacing barn. Was it just the one? Thea called, her voice sharp over the rumble of the engine. Abner killed the ignition, got out, and walked to the back of the truck. 2 long metal poles were sticking out over the tailgate. No, 2 this time, he said, his voice gravelly with fatigue. Got a 1-mile sign and a half-mile sign. He dropped the tailgate with a loud clang, and the 2 road signs rattled against the rusted truck bed. They're getting bolder, Thea, Abner said, heaving one of the signs out and carrying it toward the barn. With the Pruitts, it was just the one. I don't even know where they're finding these things. Probably ripping them right off the county roads. We're gonna have to do something about them, sooner or. Don't you dare say it, Abner, Thea snapped. I know, he said, holding his hands up in surrender. I just hate cleaning up their messes. Well, you take it up with them, Thea said, her voice dropping lower. It's your blood that calls them here. Abner's head shot up, his face a mask of fury and pain. He may be my blood, but he ain't mine, he snarled. My boy is quiet under the roots of the apple tree. This one is your kin. The couple started walking toward the house, and I ducked away from the window, my heart racing. I slipped back into the bedroom just as Carrie's was sitting up, rubbing her eyes. Hey, Ira, what time is it? Not sure, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Close to 6, I think. We should probably get going. Carrie stretched, letting out a jaw-cracking yawn. Yeah, you're right. How did you sleep? Like a log, I lied. The truth would open a door I needed to keep welded shut until we were miles away from this place. Me too, she said, smiling. Best sleep I've had in ages. I'm just going to use the bathroom, then I'll get dressed and we can hit the road. I agreed, trying not to sound as desperate as I felt. She wrapped a robe around herself, one I assumed Thea had lent her, and padded out into the hall. Abner and Thea came in through the back door just as Carrie's was coming back. Oh, Thea exclaimed, a little too brightly. I didn't expect you 2 up for another hour. Let me get some breakfast started. That's very kind, I said quickly, but we really should get on our way. I have coffee on. At least take a cup for the road, and a couple of these blueberry muffins I made yesterday. I started to politely refuse, but Carrie spoke first. I don't think I can even look at a blueberry right now, she mumbled, then made a gagging sound and pressed a hand to her mouth. Thea nodded with a knowing look. Of course, dear. How about you? She asked, turning to me. I shook my head. No thanks. I'm not much of a breakfast person. All right, Thea said, drawing the word out as if she were disappointed in us. But if you leave my house hungry, that's on you. She disappeared into the kitchen. Karis went back into the bedroom to pack her things, but Abner stayed behind, blocking the hallway. He just stood there, watching me. The silence stretched until it was humming. Your wife get the morning sickness bad? He finally asked. She did early on, I said. This is the first time in a while. Must be the stress of the trip. Abner nodded slowly, his eyes boring into me. Yeah, probably. Another long, heavy pause. You said you were with her the whole time, right? From the moment your car stopped? Yeah, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Why? He just shook his head, a slow, deliberate movement that told me absolutely nothing and everything all at once. Okay, Ara, Kari said, opening the bedroom door behind me. Ready to go. I'll get my keys, Abner said, his voice flat. The ride back to our car was dead silent. Kari sat in the passenger seat of Abner's truck, trying and failing to get comfortable. I rode in the back, the wind whipping at my face. When we got there, I jumped out and popped the hood while Karis waited in our car. To my immense relief, the engine turned over on the second try. It roared to life, the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. Thank you for everything, I said to Abner, slamming the hood shut. I don't know what we would have done without you and Thea. I held out my hand. He took it, his grip like old leather wrapped around steel. His eyes held mine, and I saw that look again, the one that said there was so much more he wanted to tell me, but something was holding him back. He let go of my hand, and I turned to get in the car. Hold on a minute, he said. Thea packed something for you. He went to the cab of his truck and came back with a small, worn cardboard box. Some things for the little one. They're old, but they're clean. We got no more use for them. I took the box, mumbling my thanks. I knew we'd probably never use them, but I also knew refusing was not an option. Thanks, Abner. Really. One more thing, he said, and his voice dropped. It wasn't a whisper. It was low and clear and dead serious, a voice stripped of all emotion. He stepped closer, so only I could hear. They get drawn to it, like moths. They can smell new life from miles away. They change the signs to bring it closer. I stared at him, my blood turning to ice water. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded, a jerky, stupid little nod. I got in the car and started to pull away. As we passed his truck, he reached out and laid his calloused hand on the passenger window, right over Karis's belly. She jumped, startled. He looked past her, his gaze locking with mine one last time. You take care of her, he said, his voice a low rumble through the glass. And know this. Whatever's growing in there, it ain't just yours anymore. He stepped back. In my rearview mirror, I watched him stand in the middle of the empty road, a lonely silhouette shrinking in a cloud of our dust.